Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at @it'sJessino. And this is the post-match podcast for Arsenal versus Watford, where we won the game. And we have named this show Scrappy Dominance. Scrappy Dominance. And no, I did not think of that myself. You know who thought of that? One of our members, Tony. He actually put that in the chat box yesterday for the instant reaction. I thought that was the perfect description for this game. Scrappy dominance. When I went back and watched the game, that's exactly what I saw. We were completely dominant for pretty much the entire game until we scored the goal. And we had some great passages of play. We put them under pressure, but it was also very, very scrappy. Like it was very much so one of those games where they were there to kick us, but we were there to kick us back. So perfect name for the 11th episode of the She Knows Arsenal podcast. So yeah, you guys, we have tons to talk about going into another international break. They seem like they're coming so quickly. And every time we get a little bit of momentum, we're stopped again by an international break. So in today's show, we're going to talk about a couple of different things, but just going back on August 28th, we went into the international break on the back of 3 losses, 9 goals against, and 0 goals for. And we were at the bottom of the table in 20th. And I'm sure you guys remember that. No confidence, manager under pressure, huge questions about our transfer window. There were things being said about the direction of the club, $50 million on backups, waste of money, worst transfer window out of all of the teams, most expensive sidestep. That was one of the bigger ones. It was just a huge, expensive sidestep. We didn't improve our first team, and there was just endless banter. And that international break for me was one of the toughest because I just felt like I cannot wait for the next game so that we could get over this hump. Like being in 20th and being called relegation Arsenal, it was just really tough. And since getting thrashed 5-0 by Man City, we went on a 10-game unbeaten run, kept 7 clean sheets in those 10 games. Second in form in the form table, just behind West Ham, who are playing phenomenally, and 5th place in the Premier League table heading into this international break. So that is a turnaround. It really, really is. And going into this international break just feels different. It feels different around the club. It feels like there's some optimism. The Arsenal fan base seems lighter. And obviously, like when you win games, things feel better, but it's more than that. We like this team. And for me personally, it's been a long time since I could actually say that I like an Arsenal team. There's been bits and pieces and players that I have liked, but ultimately this group is fighting for the club. They're fighting for each other. You can see it on the pitch. And even though they're not perfect, there's hope. There's hope. And it's still early days. And towards the end of this show, we're going to talk about top 4 chances, top 6 chances, what could potentially be, the determining factor of whether we get there or not. But even the most hardened Arsenal fan has to admit that this feels so much better. So in the chat box, you let me know how you guys are feeling about Arsenal going into this international break. And I'm going to bring in Souls now. Hey, Souls.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I can't complain. And, you were actually at the Emirates on Sunday to watch Arsenal versus Watford, and it was your first time at the Emirates, which I was praying for you. I really was. I was like, please let it be a win. Like your first game, you want it to be a win. My first game at the Emirates was not a win. It was a draw. So I was
Which one did
really
you go
hoping
to?
Arsenal versus Brighton. Emery was still in charge, and yeah, it was a bad one. But for you, what was the feeling in the Emirates? The Emirates has been described as a place with no atmosphere, very dull. Fan base is not really like up for it. It's one of those types of places. But for you, how did it feel there, at the Emirates? I know it was your first time, but how did it feel for you?
It was a little quieter than I expected. I won't lie. There's room to be truthful as well, but I won't lie. Like when, for example, Aubameyang missed the penalty, straight away Aubameyang chants around the stadium. Anything that happened, we're behind the team. It was the first time I watched a game like this where I didn't feel any nerves, and that's because the atmosphere just didn't let you get nervous. And it was like we knew something's coming, and we knew that we are going to win this game. And it was like from the fans, like especially from where I were, because it was me, Albert, obviously together, and then Curran wasn't far from us either. And it was like all of us were just making a lot of noise. Chants were starting from our end, and it was a very, very good vibe. Even though things weren't quite going, we were rallying up. Every time the players went around the ref, the fans were on the referee as well. Like, we were making sure that our voices were heard. And also, when the players were trying to crowd the ref to make a decision, we were trying to get our voices heard as well and put the pressure on the ref. So I think it was a very, very good atmosphere in that sense. But I will say, we're obsessed with Spurs, man. We really need to stop with the Spurs chants when we're playing Watford. Bar that, it was brilliant. It was really good. Everyone that I spoke to had an optimistic view, despite obviously the start. Everyone was the same. Like, when you spoke to them, saying they were scared with the way we started the season, and they were like, "Oh crap, this project could have failed before it started." And like I said, we could be looking back at this window and saying, "What a masterclass that Arsenal pulled off," or we could be looking at him saying, "What a disaster." And at the first three games, yeah, given all the context and everything, it was hard to really say anything. But everyone's in that mindset of, okay, this project is working, or there's potential for it to work. Whether Arteta can now fulfill that project is a question that's always going to be asked. But it was very good. Games like that, normally there's a nerve to it, but I didn't feel it.
I wondered if there was like a little bit of a nervousness, but it felt like from where I was sitting that the fans were very much behind the team the entire time. Sometimes when we go a minute without scoring, it gets a little quiet in there. But also Charles Watts was saying that there was actually like a holdup somewhere, a traffic jam or something that prevented some Arsenal fans from being able to get to their seats right away. So when you were watching it on the TV, you could see all these empty seats, but I think it was just a matter of that. But you could just tell, like, the fans were into it. It didn't go silent. And I think that had something to do with it always kind of feeling like the goal was going to come. And let's just be real, like, had maybe Aubameyang not been playing against us, and I say that with in a joking way, we could have battered them 4-0. We really could have, not even playing as good as we possibly can. But, from where you were sitting, did you feel like Watford had set up for that game the way that you thought that they would before the game started? I thought that they'd sit in a kind of like some sort of block and try to hit us on the counter. And I remember George saying something a little bit similar, but he didn't feel like they would sit that much, that they would try to play a little bit. What did you think before the game? And then when you were watching them play, did you feel like that's what you thought was going to happen, or was it a little bit different?
They were forced into that, I think, more so because every time, like I said, Ismail Assar needs space, and we just didn't give it to him. Ranieri then even switched his side just to try and get Sarr in, but then Tomiyasu covered him. And it was just everything Watford tried, we had an answer for. And the weird thing is, right, because we did score goals and they were disallowed. It was as simple as that. And Watford, for me, just they kind of ruined a good game in a way, because it was a really good game, but then they started to become what they said we did. When Troy Deeney said we've got no kahunas, it really, really looked like they weren't up for the fight every single time. One of our players went in for a tackle or in for like a good physical, like I call it a Premier League tackle, because you don't really see those kinds of tackles in other leagues where you win the ball, but you make sure you leave one on the player. And they're totally legit, because you won the ball, but it just happens that the players also felt it. And they were just on the floor crying. And the first time we did kick the ball out, the second time we decided, fuck this, man. Like, these men are just crying like little babies every single time. And it was just, we had an answer for everything. They were forced into a low block to play counter-attack. They realized that wasn't working. Then they tried to hold the ball a bit, but then they realized we were pressing on them, and they had no joy doing whatever they wanted. They legit had no joy playing football. I was speaking to Watford fans after the game as well, and they said that, yeah, like, we didn't have any joy. Like, we had no space. Joshua King, Ismail Assar, for example, they need space, and that's what they thought they'd get, because we'll play a high line and they can try and counter us from. But the position, what I realized was the positioning that our defenders put themselves in means that it's like they just knew where the ball was going to be, and I think
Yeah.
that was the key, because it was like every time they played a ball, it was like White was just underneath it.
And speaking of White, I want to talk about him first, but we will touch on the Ranieri stuff a little bit later because I think it's important. I mean, I forgot about what Troy Deeney said, and I would not be surprised if Arteta showed them a clip of that and was like, "Do you want them saying this about us anymore?" Like, because the way that for a young team, the way that we went about them kicking us, we kicked them back. That's something that I haven't seen from an Arsenal team in a very, very long while. But one thing that I did notice was that the way that they had set up, and they were in like a mid-lowish block, and they were really compact in the midfield. We were really camped out on the flanks, but they allowed our center backs a lot of space. And Gabriel's not really a dribble through the midfield type of guy, but Ben White is, and he definitely took advantage of that throughout the game. He had the most touches and 101 touches, the most passes, 81 passes, most clearances in 6, most blocks 3, most interceptions 2. He had a monster game. Obviously, he was the man of the match. He had an involvement in the goal. I mean, he was so far up. He was on like basically right in like by the box. Like he was so close in the involvement for the goal. After like Sar got smashed and all of that kind of stuff. It was great. Um, he's just been a revelation since the Brentford match. And it's just funny to me how people continue to talk about him as if he's this like this light defender that doesn't really defend. I mean, his defensive numbers have been really, really good, and then he also adds the ability to go forward. And he's just been so good since that Brentford game where there was a lot of negativity around him. Another clean sheet, obviously, under his belt. What was it like for you? You were sitting kind of up high, seeing him make those runs from midfield. I mean, we haven't had a defender do that in a long time. So what did it feel like to you, like watching Ben White play in the flesh?
It was actually a lot better, because obviously you get to see, you can watch what you want to watch essentially. Obviously, when you're watching it on TV, it's kind of like whatever the cameraman shows you is kind of the vicinity of what you get to see. And it, like I said, like, it was kind of like the thing with him is it's like he's mastered the art of defending to the point he doesn't defend. Like, I know that sounds a bit weird, but he's just in the right place at the right time, and he gets his body in front of players, so it looks like he's not really done anything. But it's like he doesn't allow players the time to get onto the ball to begin with for him to defend. And every time he got the ball, it's like he's clever enough to understand when to lay it off. And he was one of the players for me that let the ball go earlier, and he was whipping them in. Like, he was one of the players that saw a crossfield pass, and that was one of my frustrations. Like, the crossbar was always on, but he was the only player. Maybe it's because that's the role he's been given. Like, you have to give it to Ben White, and he will then do that. But he's brilliant. And we said it, and I remember me and George getting ridiculed for saying he's going to have a better season than Varane, or he's going to be a better transfer than Varane, and he is. And I still believe he will be a bigger player than Varane will be, and he's. Yeah, and I've said it to people: stop panicking. I know Brentford wasn't a good, and I'll admit it as well. Even as a fan of Ben White, it wasn't a good game. It's not really the way you want to announce yourself to Arsenal. But we know why that happened. It was a lot of, it was an injury, COVID riddled team that changed literally 2 hours before the game. But now, as he's settled into the team and he's gotten to know kind of the team, and midfield's been a bit more secure, the attack's been a bit more stable. He's been the driving force to any attack that we've got. Obviously getting the assist, the assist for the goal, because I know it was a weird goal, but it was like he did basically make that goal happen, and he's even more intelligent in person than what you see on TV.
But I think that's the thing though, Souls. It's that, people associate defending with last ditch tackles and what are your tackles numbers. But for a lot of defenders, if you're in the right place and you're intelligent, right place, right time, and you anticipate, you actually don't have to tackle. A lot of times, defenders with high tackle numbers, it's because they were out of position or they got beat. Ben White is definitely the type that, and Gabriel has a little bit of this as well, but we know that he's a little bit of the, if things go wrong, he's going to clean it up. Ben White is the anticipatory kind of like, I'm going to be in the right place. I'm going to jump in front of you. And he did do a lot of that, but he's been doing that for the last couple of games. And I don't know why it feels like he's not getting the respect that he should. I know it's early days. And like with everything that we're going to be saying for the next couple of months, it's going to be early days. But from the Brentford game to now, I don't know what Ben White needs to do. He probably needs to change his name to Benigno, Blanco or something. And that might be when people start to, because there's a little bit of like, oh, English defender, it's not as great as being like a Brazilian defender or whatever, because it's not exotic. But he plays just like the defenders that everybody kisses, like that people kiss their ass. Like he does. He just all that stuff. So for me, this performance was it was also an FU to Southgate, really, because I mean, you have Connor Cody and Tyrone Mings in the team, and you could have Ben White, and he's the perfect player to step in for John Stones, who may or may not be, good to go for the next however many years. He's like 27 or whatever. Ben White is 24, but I mean, the guy has just been he's been so good.
I'm still baffled. I'm so baffled because I know Southgate kind of picks it on merit of how you do for England more than he does on squad. You have to kind of bide your opportunity. But for me, it's just baffling because he is the best English defender right now. Even Maguire's dropped off. John Stones hasn't really played. So yeah, it's weird not to pick your best centre back and then Tyrone Mings, who's also not even playing for Villa, he's only playing now because of suspension. Was it House that ended up getting suspended, or was it I can't remember. One of them got suspended.
It was Konsa, I think.
Yeah, and that's the only reason he's going to play. And you're thinking he's good enough for England. And it's like, all right, even if you don't want to put Ben White there, you've got Tomori, for example. You've got Lewis Dunk, who for me is better. There's many other defenders that I'd probably put over the ones who were selected. So it is a bit of a strange one, but we know what Southgate's like. He's got his favourites, and he'll always select them. That's his own loss, in my opinion.
The good thing about it is that, selfishly as an Arsenal fan, even when, our players, I feel like they deserve to get called up into their national teams. With Gabriel going, to Brazil, and congratulations to him for getting his first senior call up for the Brazilian national team. I don't think we want too many of our players out, knowing that AFCON is around the corner, and we're a couple of injuries away from being in a difficult position. So I'm happy for Ben White to get some rest, but I do think he's making his name known. And there's so many people that were so negative about him when he was coming in from the Arsenal fan base and outside of it. And I think he's making some people look really, really stupid. But yeah, we move on to the next thing. Great performance by him. But the next section is kind of about competition for places. And I think there's a couple of different conversations that we can have in regards to this, which is something that we couldn't say, maybe a couple of years ago, like even maybe 6 months ago. There just wasn't that competition that you really need. And Arteta was asked about Nuno Tavares in his post-match presser, and in regards to Tierney as well. And he didn't really say one way or the other which one he felt like was the number one. But this is what he did say. He said, well, Nuno is playing because he deserves to play. And he's been exceptional in all of the performances where he has been given an opportunity. But I cannot say anything different with Kieran. Kieran has been superb for us. Kieran has been injured. He came back 2 days ago to do his first full training session. This is what we need. 2 top players that are raising the level of their position. And I'm happy with that. I think it would be extremely hard to believe that Nuno has overthrown Tierney, who is not just an exceptional player, but a leader within the team. But you cannot fault Tavares for what he has shown. And he looks like a star in the making also. So very high praise from Arteta for both players. One exceptional and a leader in the team. Another one who is a star in the making. That's what you want in an Arsenal team. Like, I'm like injected. I'm loving that. But looking at it now, hearing what Arteta has said, not really giving it one way or the other who he thinks is the number one, Tavares had another really, really good performance against Watford. Not as clean as the last two, but he didn't have as much space to run into. And I think it was more the fact that he was so high and not given the license to run into space. He was more already up there. But nevertheless, like his physicality, his athleticism, his quickness, quick feet, endeavor, energy, bravery make him so difficult to play against. And not to mention him and Ainsley Maitland-Niles pocketed Sarr. That was something that I was like, if he can do that, I feel more comfortable, because the defensive part of his game was always something that people talked about not being so great. And I think he showed that he can be competent when asked. And it's interesting, but Souls, for you, it can't be as simple now as Tierney comes back from international break and he's fit. This is all if he is fit, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can't be that easy that he comes back and he gets the shirt back. Not after what Tavares has done. It can't be that easy, can it?
No, it's not, and this is the wonderful thing, and this is why I say to people, I like what it's not. Maybe I didn't agree initially with how we did things in terms of this project youth. Maybe, and I said it multiple times. I maybe would have done it differently, but this is what we wanted. You know, for many years, even under Wenger, like we wanted competition. We wanted to be able to. No, I would. When I say drop players, I don't mean it in that sense, but like we want to be able to, like, when an injury does occur, for that player to go in and make it like, okay, yeah. I'm not saying we don't miss Tierney. There are parts of his Tierney's game that we do really miss, but there's also Tavares' games that then make up for that miss. So they're very similar but very different. Like Tavares for me is someone who's, because he's so two-footed, he's a bit more direct with his approach, and he doesn't really need to cut back onto his left foot or his right foot. He can do whatever he wants to do, and I felt that gave us a different dynamic. And obviously, we always question, can he do it defensively, because he has played against supposedly weaker wingers in terms of their ability. And Ismail Assar is a good test, to the point where they had to change him from the right wing to the left wing to see if Sarr got any more joy, because João Pedro, like, as you know, that wasn't their outlet. They were trying to make Ismail Assar their outlet, and he was getting no joy against Tavares because of the pace, because of the physicality he brings. And obviously, we know Tomiyasu, the one thing he lacks is pace. So they thought, okay, let's put him on that side and try and get him in behind. But obviously, even with Tommy, like, he had no joy either. And that's the wonderful thing. And we've said this on this on the channel, like, and on other shows as well, that we need to get used to the squad getting better, and our favorite players may not always be playing. And that's the beauty of what we're doing. And he said it, and he said it. There is no first team choices. There is no first team player. When the Emi Martinez situation came up, he even said it there. He goes, "I'm never going to say you're my number one or you're a first team player." He's always said, if you perform, you'll play. If you don't perform, then obviously we'll go back to the drawing board. We'll develop you, we'll train you, and then you'll be given your opportunity again. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah, for sure. It's not something that I feel like we need to panic about. It's just it's a good thing to have, and an interesting conversation to have. I know that there'll be sides. Like, there always is sides. Like, especially because Tierney is such a cult hero at this point for Arsenal in this new team, because he's been here the longest.
Yeah.
Like, out of this whole new group, he's been here the longest. He's been here longer than he came in with Pepe. So he's been here, so there's a lot of fans that just love him so much. I remember last season when we started to play a little bit better, I think it was like Saka and Tierney's kits, like their jerseys with their names, were outselling Aubameyang and Lacazette at one point. So Tierney is a crowd favorite, but at the same point, like, when I watched Tavares play yesterday, I was like, no, it's going to be harder than just Tierney has been the starter and you did a job, but now he's back in. Because when I look at Liverpool coming up in a couple of weeks, what I see is that a really good team that's leaking goals, and their weak side is the right side with Trent on it. Obviously, Trent is an amazing player, generational talent, one of the best right backs in the world at what he does, but he's suspect defensively, and he plays in the midfield as a right back. So there's tons of space, and behind him, he tends to click off. And I'm thinking to myself, who would I rather be in that space and behind him? Would I prefer it to be Tavares and ESR, or would I prefer it to be Aubameyang and Tavares? Do I prefer it to be Tierney and Aubameyang? There's definitely some questions to be asked, and I put it in the chat box to see what you guys were saying, and I'm going to read some of your guys' comments. Joe is saying Tavares for me against Liverpool. Dave is saying Tavares as well. Tony is saying both Nuno and KT for Liverpool in a back three. We can talk about that as well. Lone Star is saying that this is progress. I think so as well. Io says, damn, KT getting forgotten. Those Gooners ain't loyal. I mean, that's how it goes. That's how it goes. Let's see. Sar is a good test. Apparently he isn't. I mean, I do think he was a good test, but I think Tavares passed it. So Dev says, I think it's better to ease Kearney in against easier opposition. If Tierney plays against Liverpool and has a bad performance, agendas will be out against him. I thought about that as well, that maybe it would be a good idea especially if Tierney's not 100% plays for Scotland, maybe it would be okay to play Tavares. But I do also like the idea of a back three. But then Arteta also has been reluctant to change into a back three against better opposition. He didn't do it against Chelsea, and he didn't do it against Man City. So I don't know if I see him doing it against Liverpool. But what is your thought on this whole Tavares Tierney thing? And who are you going for against Liverpool? I mean, it's a big game that we could potentially get something out of. I don't think it's necessarily a sit back and keep the score down, because these guys are leaking goals. Who would you play?
It's so hard because there's reasons I play Tavares and there's reasons I play Tierney. The reason why I would opt for like a Tierney, for example, is the experience more than anything. Obviously, big games mean big players, and and this isn't a knock on Tavares, but obviously he's new to the Premier League. There is going to be moments, especially like a game like Liverpool at Anfield. It's a crowd, like Anfield is up for games like this, and it can get hostile, and that's where the experience can play a part. But I don't really see him being phased by that. So it's so hard because, like, for me, the reason why, I want to play Tavares for this game more because I feel like he'll have the match sharpness required to play a game like this. But secondary to that, the way Liverpool press, I can't have Kieran Tierney cutting back onto his better foot because it's too predictable. And they know that, okay, if we just don't allow him onto his left foot, then we've kind of cut out his threat. Whereas with Tavares, he can play the ball first hand because he is very two-footed. He's very two-footed. Like, there was balls that I was like, oh my God, what foot did he use? And for me, it's that millisecond that you won't get against Liverpool. And I feel like Tavares can take more advantage of that than Tierney can. But that's more because he's not been sharp enough. And obviously it depends on kind of how many games he plays, how many minutes he gets leading up to the Liverpool game. It's hard. I wouldn't complain about whoever starts, to be honest.
I'm going to keep it 100. I'm going to keep it really, really 100 here. So for me, I think it would be harsh to drop Tavares after the 3 performances that he's had. And that means I don't think it's necessarily now Tavares is the starter and Tierney is the backup. I think it's more Tierney, I think it's going to have to earn his spot back. I think Tavares has played too good for you to say that Tierney can just walk straight back in. That being said, we're talking about Tavares going forward and Tierney going forward, but there's also a really good player by the name of Mo Salah that's going to be playing on that side. So whoever's playing on that side, Ismail Assar is a test, but Mo Salah is a whole different ball game here. So but let's be 100. As I think Tierney is a B- defender. I think he's a B- one-on-one defender. I think from what I've seen from Tavares, he's probably a C defender, but what he has is the recovery speed to make up for it. But I think Tavares is probably better going forward at this point based on the season. So I think Tavares just slightly edges it. I don't think Tierney is that much better of a defender that it means that you have to have him in there and Tavares is dead. I think Tavares has shown himself to be a little bit of a better defender than maybe we gave him credit for. So for me, I think I would start Tavares, But then that I do think Tierney needs to work himself back into the team, and that's really tough for me to say. I don't know. It's because I also don't want Tierney to be half-wit and not 100% fit and have a bad performance and people go in on him. So it's kind of like protecting Tierney, but also keeping it real that is Tierney so much better of a defender than Tavares that it's worth taking away that threat that we have going forward with Tavares? Is it? Like, I'm not sure. It's so
We're gonna have a
difficult.
conversation in a bit about this, so that's why I'm going with Tavares because of the follow-up conversation we're gonna have. Um,
Yeah, okay.
but yeah, no, for me, I think with Tavares, I think with Kieran, I'm not gonna say he's been found out because I feel like that's the wrong way to put it. But when you're playing these big sides, especially when you've got Van Dijk coming at you, when you've got obviously I know they've got a few injuries that are supposedly coming back for the Arsenal game. Um, so it'd be very difficult to know exactly how they line up because I know Fabinho is in and out of the team at the moment. Like speaking to a few Liverpool fans, they were like, he's kind of injured, he's kind of not. And obviously Matip is out, I believe. I think Gomez is also out. Um, and then obviously Robertson's been in and out of the team because of how, what's his name, the Greece, Tsimikas, how he's been playing. They've kind of put him in and out of the team as well. So it kind of depends on how they line up in defence. That we need, it's going to be milliseconds. It's going to be that fine margin of you can't cut it back onto your left foot constantly. And I feel like that's becoming a bit too predictable now. And why he
Mm.
doesn't look so much of a threat this season or the games he has played. Obviously, things can change. Like the Premier League's fortunes can change many, many times. And Kieran Tierney could be a little bit more intelligent in the way that he uses his left foot. So, yeah, no,
It's so difficult.
yeah, it is.
It's so
I
difficult.
hate to
Like,
be Arteta. I hate to
you
be
know what
Arteta.
I kind of feel like, I don't know, it just depends, but I think everybody's going to be waiting, to see what he does. But I don't think it's as easy as Tierney is fit, so he walks back into this team. I think Tavares has done more than enough to really stake his claim. He did not come to be a backup. Let's just say that. But I think another interesting conversation about competition for places comes with the very impressive performance from Ainsley Maitland-Niles against Watford. He just barely missed out on the man of the match behind Ben White, but he had the most ball recoveries, the most tackles, the most interceptions. He was very good. Like, his passing was much better than I remember. He was calm. He was switched on. He did a lot of that left back Xhaka role thing, and he was just immense. Like, he really, really was. And he was so good that a lot of Arsenal fans that I've seen on like Arsenal Twitter over the last day have said that he should keep his spot and play with Thomas when Thomas comes back. Let's just start off with what you thought about Ainsley Maitland-Niles against Watford before we get into the nitty-gritty.
He was actually incredible. I think I have to admit I did not see him playing this well in midfield. Again, it is Watford, so it is a little bit difficult to kind of they. I mean, that doesn't take away his performance, but it was Watford, and I don't feel like their midfield is something that we can kind of praise and go, "Oh my God, what a test for him." But it's more about the way he played than who he played, and it was the way that he effectively dropped into left back, isolating Ismail Assar and any space that he got in behind. And I'm not saying that Mo Salah can't play without space, but he is someone who does also like that space to be able to attack into. But he's also got the feet to be able to get out of tight situations. And this is why I said, the reason why I would play Tavares or Tierney and the defensive side doesn't really matter to me. If we play someone like a Maitland-Niles who can affect, because he has played left back and he has played right back, so he's familiar with both sort of full back roles anyway. So regardless of where he drops into, he's quite comfortable doing that. And he seems to be another player who's kind of used to playing with both feet. He knows when to whip a ball in, play it down the lines, play it in the channels, play it safe, recycle possession, when to kind of drive with the ball, but when also to let the ball go and let the progressor in terms of like Sambi or ESR just take over. And that's the reason why I'm not really bothered who plays or the defensive side of like Tavares' game or Tierney's game, because I feel like Maitland-Niles covers that space well. And to be fair, we've always said it, he's a very good fullback. So when he's playing in midfield to begin with, and then he's dropping into the fullback position, it kind of bridges two problems that we've had with Xhaka being injured. Who's going to do that to cover for the space that we leave the left back with? And that's the reason for kind of the logical reason and the process why I would probably give it to Maitland-Niles, just because I like that system more than I like the two centre mids being close together, because I do sometimes feel like it's too risky, and Liverpool turning possession over is a lot more scary to me than someone like a Maitland-Niles who can control the game. I felt like this is the first game in a long time I felt there was more control to the game than we've had in the previous games. But then again, it's Watford, so it's a very difficult, I could be saying it, but it was a weaker opposition.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different. Well, first of all, just on Ainsley Maitland-Niles, this isn't new. He's been creeping up in terms of his performance levels in midfield for a couple of games now. But I think this was his coming of age performance in that position against Premier League opposition, not looking like a fullback trying to mimic a midfielder, but an actual midfielder. He was very reliable. He was the grown up, I thought, in the midfield. I thought Sambi was following Ainsley's lead, and I thought that that was a good thing. Ainsley's 24. So at this point, he needs to nail down a position. In my opinion, it's not good for him to be a jack of all trades and a master of none at this point in his career, because he needs to start formulating his identity as a player. And he's doing that. And he was so good. That was like the perfect performance for him. And he was like a shutdown defender in the midfield. Like, he was one of those where you can't get past him. And I thought that that was like, that's his strength. Like, his strength is you can't get past him, but he's also very quick. His passing looks a lot better. He's a lot quicker. He was involved in the goal that got called offside for Saka. He was involved in that one as well.
That was a beautiful pass.
It was a great pass. Like, he just was so good, but then when you start looking at Liverpool and you start moving forward, for me, it's like Sambi and Thomas worked really good, like when they were together, and we played against Leicester and Aston Villa with that particular system where the left back was kind of just the left back and Tavares was timing his runs instead of staying so far up, and the left-sided center midfielder going into the left back. We reverted back to that against Watford and was just fine against Watford. But you have to also remember that if you have an Ainsley dropping into that left back position, which if you do that, he's the only one who can do it. Sambi can't do it. No. If you have somebody doing it, it has to be Ainsley. That leaves Thomas isolated. And I think Liverpool, with their strength, could overpower Thomas by himself in that midfield, the way that we saw earlier on against Brighton. So it's an interesting dynamic. But if you do have Ainsley dropping into left back, that allows you to use Tavares as more of a weapon further up the pitch, and then that's when you pick Tavares over Tierney, because Tierney is not as big of a threat that far forward. So it's such an interesting dilemma, but I would say I don't like the system of them dropping into left back as much as you do, because I personally feel like the midfielders need to be close together. And if they need to be close together, I prefer it be Sambi and Thomas, because that's what worked against Aston Villa and Leicester. Better opposition than Watford.
The other reason I say it is because it's more so that the more I've seen Liverpool this season, most of their threat comes on that right-hand side. That's why that's why I want the double team of like a Maitland-Niles and a Tavares to cover for Trent and Salah. Obviously, even when you look at the West Ham game, all their threat came from the right-hand side. Even the free kick, for example, was taken on the right-hand side. It was won on that side and obviously scored on that side as well. And then when you look at like Trent's cross, for example, that was because he had wide open space when no one really pressed that space and pressed Trent to cover for him. And that's why I think if we can get Maitland-Niles to cover for Tavares when he bombs on forward, it's more important than the midfield battle, due to the fact that Thiago might not be in this game, and Fabinho looks a bit shaky, and I don't know how many games he's going to get leading into the Arsenal game. And even Liverpool fans are saying to me, like, he does not look himself, and he's not going to have any games. Obviously, I don't think he's been called up to the Brazil team either, so he's going to be very limited with the time he gets to play. So that's the reason why I want the Maitland-Niles Partey partnership, because then it alleviates Partey being the defensive player and it allows him to be the progressor, which I feel like is more important for him. But I mean, it's a good dilemma to have, and I think. But the issue with Liverpool is both things need to be covered in terms of we do kind of need to win that midfield battle as much as we need to win that full-back, winger, or wide area battle as well. But I feel like Maitland-Niles kind of covers both for me, especially. But then the dilemma of it was Watford, whereas the Sambi's done it against, in my opinion, like
Leicester and
no,
Aston Villa,
yeah,
better
which are better
opposition.
opposition, especially
Yeah.
Villa, who have got a good midfield and got good wide players. So it's a wonderful dilemma. Let's put it there. But I feel like for
It
me,
is.
I want Maitland-Niles just because I feel Trent and Salah are more of a threat than that midfield for me.
The one thing I will say about Liverpool at this point is that even though they're having defensive issue, it does stem from their midfield being weaker and not performing as well as they have in the past. And I do think that if we want to win the midfield battle, which I personally feel like is the most important thing, we need to exist within that midfield. So it's going to be interesting to see what Arteta does, but that's interesting in isolation talking about Liverpool. But what this also did was give us a kind of like a vision of what it would look like if what Arsenal could look like without Thomas in AFCON, and no El Neni, obviously, but I don't think he would have been playing anyway. And that's Ainsley Maitland-Niles and Sambi together, which worked well against Watford. Was that enough of a performance to make you think that we don't need to bring in a midfielder in Jan?
Oh no, we
Because
do.
yeah,
We do.
we still do. Yeah. I mean, what we do know is that we have some
They need to be
interesting.
tested. I feel like
Yeah.
the games they play together, as look, they're must wins. Like we have to win them. Like we have to beat the likes of Watford if we want any shout of being in the top six race. Even for a top four, you have to beat some of the top opposition, but you definitely need to beat everyone below you. But obviously, it's very hard to say that we don't need a midfield because they played Watford together, and I believe they played Burnley. Was it together? I believe it was. And the other game was, I think they played one of
Who's
the cup games.
Sambi
Yeah,
and
Ainsley. I
Ainsley?
think it was one of the cup games. Yeah, that they played together. So it's
They
very
played against
difficult.
Leeds together, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and Leeds. Which I mean, they've
No, it
been
was El
all
Neni.
rightly.
It was El
Yeah,
Neni.
I think there was a cup. I think it was Wimbledon they played together. I believe. But then again, we
Yeah.
didn't really get to watch that game because it's decided not to put
Yeah.
it on TV. But no, I
Exactly.
think they need to be tested before I can say actually yeah. But I'm still going to offer we need a midfield.
Not only that, I think they're both not of a similar profile, but we have Thomas, Sambi, Granite, and Ainsley Maitland-Niles that all want to play at the base of a midfield that don't really add to goals. I think knowing that you have that, four that can play in the base of your midfield, you might want to go after a more attacking eight if you think that Ainsley can kind of play that six-ish role in the meantime. But we definitely still need somebody. But the best thing about Ainsley Maitland-Niles playing the way he did against Watford was showing that Arteta can manage players that have been on the outside. There is a little bit of he's a bad man manager, and he may well have been, or he may still be struggling with it. He's never managed before. He's always been a second, number two, and I don't think they're necessarily the ones making the big calls in terms of man management, managing the players in that way. And he's had some tips with players here and there, whether it's your Ozils, whether it's, your maybe your Williams, who knows who it really was, because we don't really know. But what I do know is a couple of months ago, Ainsley Maitland-Niles was on Instagram and put on his Instagram stories that he was basically ready to walk out of Arsenal. And now he's integrated into the team. He looks happy. He's playing the position that he wants to play. And does that give you like the confidence that Arteta is learning how to manage players, that have been iced out and brought back in? I mean, the Ainsley Maitland-Niles story has been going on since Arteta has come in, because if you remember, when Arteta first came in, he was his number one right back.
Yeah, I think both parties are to blame a little bit because Maitland-Niles, I think, didn't accept it at first that he is going to be, a fullback. And I don't think he proved enough, even to the fan base, that he should be playing in midfield, and that if he was to play in midfield, he's going to be mid-table, sort of bottom Premier League standard. Like, even went on loan to West Brom and didn't really cover himself with any glory. So I could understand why Arteta gave him the cold shoulder on the midfield position and said to him, look, we'll see. And obviously, I think the communication could have been better between the two parties in terms of kind of where the development's actually going to go, what is the plan for you as an individual player, and what we're going to do with you. Because that's all that happened. After that post, Arteta and Maitland-Niles got into a room and just had like a good meeting. Clearly objectives were clarified and how the development's going to go for both players. And I think that's all it was. And maybe Maitland-Niles should have pulled Arteta aside and asked him this, or got the relevant parties involved to say, look, I need to know what my plan is, or what are you looking to do with myself and my development, because at the time, look, he is still a young-ish player. Like, he's 22, 23, 24 within the Arteta reign. So, but he's proving it, and this is the difference. And I think because we were in such a turmoil in a way in last season, we finished 8th out of the Europa League, out of the FA Cup, out of the Carabao Cup. Obviously, when you're in that sort of atmosphere, it's very toxic. It's at boiling point. But when you're winning, it's a lot easier to convince players of why they're being excluded, or why certain development needs to happen before they're given an opportunity. And I think that's all it is. And I think, yes, he is learning, of course, but because we've got this sort of, now the plan is clear to the players, because there was no ambition last summer transfer. We bought in Partey, and yes, obviously, bought Gabriel in.
Gabriel. Mm-hmm.
And then obviously we brought Willian in, which obviously I know people think the Willian one. I get the reasoning behind it. I wasn't in agreement with the signing, but I got the logic. But obviously that's not enough ambition for the squad to be like, oh my God, yes, we're turning something here, because it wasn't enough. We know we needed more. But this season, obviously, with the plethora of players that we bought in, we are in a competition. It's a good atmosphere. Everyone's competing with each other. And I feel like that's just naturally developed him as a player as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think the change in the atmosphere has definitely helped, and given him Arteta figuring out a way to use him in the position that, he really wants to play in, and so I think Arteta's focused on his strengths, try to figure out a way to make them better, use him in a situation where he would thrive. And all of that has really come together in a way that, for me, I did not anticipate when he put out that Instagram story. I actually didn't anticipate this when he was playing for West Brom. When he was playing for West Brom, I thought to myself, listen to Big Sam. Big Sam literally is telling you, and like, who listens to Big Sam? But Big Sam says, go back to Arsenal and play whatever position that they want you to play. And I thought he was throwing away such a big opportunity to be the starting right back for Arsenal. But now watching him play midfield, I'm kind of happy that he pushed for it, because he actually can play in midfield. Now, the levels to which he can do that are still yet to be known, because again, he needs to be tested. But what it does show is that players can change your mind. You can think something, and oh, he's almost 24 and he still hasn't showed the chops for midfield. 1 game, 2 games, 3 games can really change your mind. And I love that. I love that your mind can be changed. And I think like Arsenal in general, as a club this season, has been changing people's minds from the minute that we played against Norwich. Things have really changed. So Ainsley is a big part of it. But there's 81 of you guys watching on all platforms. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's see what you guys are saying. Io says, is he ready to play midfield against the big boys? Didn't see it at West Brom. I mean, that's what we have to see. We have to see, and we'll only know if he gets tested, won't we? Ignatius says, Arteta has shown that he has good man management skills. No player in Arteta's plans has left. We have retained all of our promising young prospects. That's very, very true. Tony says, I'd be happy to keep Swiss Army knife Ainsley Maitland-Niles his entire career. The thing about Ainsley is that although I don't think he's as good as Saka in terms of like the levels to which he can play most positions, I do think he's more than good. I think because he's obviously Halen grown type of player, that he has that exceptional skill set, athleticism as well. So I think he can be a Swiss Army knife at a high level, but I also can see him just being somebody that fills in at midfield for us as well. Like, I love it. I love these like little redemption stories. Yo-Yo says AMN's redemption arc seems scripted by Amazon. Shocking. Stop it. Stop it, Yo-Yo. Soko says, good show as always. Thank you so much. Bowie the Cat says, I'm still dubious about AMN. I need to see consistency before I trust him fully. And that's 100% sure. You know, like that we don't, we all, I think, agree with that. Olivier says, accountability, that's the Arteta requirement. Exactly. So now, what was the next thing? Oh, same old Arsenal. No, let's go back. Let's go back. We do have to talk about. No, there's two other players we have to talk about. We have to talk about Emile Smith-Rowe. Emile Smith-Rowe, 3 in a row. Like, I was so wanting to use that so badly on Twitter. I was like forcing it so hard. It was actually like really sad to force it. But yeah, Emile Smith-Rowe scores another goal, 3 in a row. Gets his first England call up today. Obviously, some players dropped out, but nevertheless, 20 years old, getting his first full England call up. Been changing the game for Arsenal since December 2020. He was the catalyst for a lot of this change that we've seen. I mean, Saka was kind of already there, but he needed a partner, and now he has that. And Emile Smith-Rowe, I watched the game back, and I didn't realize how good he actually was. Is he the finished article? No. Still needs to work on his passing. But his shooting is getting better. He's arriving late in the box. His movement is good, adding goals to his game. His physicality has gotten a lot better. This is somebody who couldn't finish 60 minutes in a game. You know, we had to rest him very often because he didn't have that physicality. Now he's able to sustain, you know, game after game after game, almost playing 90 minutes. I mean, what can this boy, like, what can't he do? You know, every game it's kind of like Saka last season where it's like, how much better can this guy get? Emile Smith-Rowe is having a Saka season, you know, and it's only 11 games in. I mean, how impressed were you watching Emile play against Watford? And I mean, do you just want to heap praise on the kid? I mean, like, he's amazing.
I think the call-up says everything, really, because there's still probably a lot more midfielders out there they could have picked, but they obviously opted for Emile Smith-Rowe because they see what we see, the versatility, you know, the young leader, technically secure, adding. And the one thing is, we've always said it, with both Saka and Emile, they needed to add goal contributions, assist contributions to their game to really be a threat. And Emile definitely has done that. He's taken that on board and he's got out there, practiced on his composure, getting into those positions and really taking his opportunities when they come. You know, he's putting his foot through it. He's really, really come a long way. And even the way that he just receives the ball, for example, just sets him up for many, many attacks. And he's if it isn't for him, we're not really doing as well as we are. And for me, I thought he had a sublime game. It was a lot, for me, it was quite a mill game than what he normally is. But I feel like that's just because of the way Watford's setup was very low, didn't really give us an opportunity to get in behind or anything. But he's a driving force who comes in deep. Even defensively, he's superb as well. He helps out. He presses a lot. He leaves every inch of his, being on that pitch and then comes off. And, like you said, he's taking ownership and he's being rewarded for it. And, that's kind of what Saka's doing. He knows that Saka and Aubameyang aren't performing, rather than being like, oh, yeah, you know what, I've got my scapegoat. Yeah, I can be like, yeah, Aubameyang's not performing, so it's a bit difficult for me to. Or you could be like, oh, the senior players haven't stepped up, but he hasn't. He's like, all right, they're not stepping up, let me step up. And that's what I like. And I think that's a team thing, I was kind of saying it like, Saka and Aubameyang haven't done well and they didn't play well, both of them, but we won the game because other players stepped up. And that's what managers love. And that's probably why Southgate opted for Emile, because he's going to take accountability, if anything. And that is a trait that any manager loves. And anything that goes wrong, he's not blaming other people, a short pass or anything like that. He's not sat there and being like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? It's like, all right, go again. Let's go again. And he's getting rewarded heavily for it. and he keeps going. You know, there's so many moments his head could have dropped in that game, but he kept going, and that's what I love about him.
Yeah, it was one of those where watching the game, I just thought, okay, he was just okay, but he got his goal, which is perfect. Even when a player is not playing amazingly, if they're still contributing to goals and assists, that is exactly what you want. And I don't think when I first watched the game, I was like, he was just okay. When I rewatched it, some of the work that he was doing off of the left hand side, it didn't all come off, but he's getting better. His touches are getting better. He's more confident on the ball. What if the one thing that's holding him back is his passing? And I think that that will
Yeah.
come over time, but I don't think he's ever going to be an incisive passer like that. I think his superpower is dribbling and ball progressing in that way and being that physical, sprinty kind of player. And that's where you look to like your Odegaards and stuff to pick up that slack. Even Saka's passes have improved, and he's a more incisive passer than ESR at this point. I mean, Saka could have had 2 assists. He could have had one for Aubameyang and one for ESR in that second half. So I don't think it's necessarily a big deal that he's not this, vision passer or whatever like that, because we know that the skills that he does have is so dynamic and so scary that I don't know about you, but I don't want to be the right back watching Tavares and ESR run toward me. I actually don't want to be that person. And he's just growing game by game. And I couldn't be happier. Like I really, really couldn't. And the number 10 shirt has not weighed him down at all. It has lifted him up. I thought that giving him the number 10 may stunt him just a little bit because it's such an iconic shirt and numbers mean something in football, not only to fans, but to the players. And they know what they're doing when they pick those numbers out. Saka is the number 7. Obviously, the number 7 is an important number in football, as well as like number 9. But the number 10 is the most iconic one. And when you play for a team like Arsenal that has had great number 10s in the past, Bergkamp, Ozil, Wilshere, if you want to add him in there, like you gotta step up. And he has done that. And so I can't hate on him like at all. Like the guy is doing it. And like I have to be real, like when Conor Gallagher scored, I was like, okay, Smith Rowe has to score too. Like he actually has to score, and he did it. So that's my guy, and we're really lucky to have him. And I think over this international break, what we'll talk about a little bit more is building the team around these young players, and how do we not waste this golden generation the way that maybe we felt like we had with Wilshere, Ramsey, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Jenkinson, that group. I saw a picture of them today and it just made me sad. It's kind of similar to what we're doing now. Obviously, that was a British core, but I think what we've done this time around, even though they're not all British, is we've brought in a core that we need to make count to see that group of players in their late 20s to early 30s, and most of them are not even really playing anymore at the highest level. I think, and they didn't really do much for Arsenal if we keep it 100. I do think that it would be an interesting conversation to talk about how we don't make that same mistake. And was it just they weren't good enough, or did we make mistakes? So stay tuned for that a little bit later on. But Aubameyang, where Emil had a great game, Aubameyang was playing against us. He might as well have had a yellow and black top. Aubameyang's your guy, but let's be real. Everything that he did was pretty much to the detriment of what we were trying to do. Missed a penalty, offside for Saka's goal, tapped in Odegaard's goal. I felt so bad for Odegaard. I really, really did, because I thought he had a great cameo. But the criticism of Aubameyang for me was just a little bit harsh, considering he had played so well in the past couple of games. How did you feel about Aubameyang? Were you disappointed in him, or did you just feel like a bad day at the office?
Oh, he really pissed me off for that Odegaard, because that, oh my God, like you should have seen. Oh, we were like, because we were all like, oh, he's fucked it, and then seconds later he just goes and puts it in, and yeah, and then obviously we were all cheering because like everyone that I was talking to, we didn't realize Aubameyang touched it. I don't know, maybe it was more obvious than it seemed, but I didn't know he touched it. And then they were like offside corner. I was like, how the fuck do you go offside when he's dribbled past 2 players? And I was like, how are you checking this for offside? This is stupid. And then like apparently then someone goes, oh, they're checking it, and then obviously VAR replays on the screen. So we were like, oh, you fucking idiot. You fucking idiot. Like, why? I get it, he's a striker, and um it's that striker's instinct. I get it because I've done it in the past as well. But I'm like, why did
You've
you
done
do
it
that?
yourself?
Yeah, I've done it once or twice. Yeah, not
You're a
realizing
striker?
I did it, but then I moved into more midfield. But yeah, I used to love, you know. But yeah, he honestly, he frustrated me. And then do you know what the funny thing is? We were all saying like, watch Aubameyang go to his left again, and then he goes to his left for the penalty, and I was like, come on, man, you're becoming like a book right now. Like you're not a book that you've read like 10 times. You're literally doing the same things over again. And look, he has played better this season up until obviously this game, but you can write that off. He had. We've always said it. You can have you can have 4 good games out of 5, and you're fine. Especially for a talisman, you need the baseline should be 4 games that you've played well or like good, and then 1 game. If it's you're like all right, whatever, you can let that go. But he
Yeah.
really does need to step it up now because everyone else is, and he's the one falling behind at the moment. So he does really need to push on from this. But I think he's got it in him.
Yeah. I mean, Tony says Abba's intentions were 100%. He tried so hard, but basically everything went wrong for him. And I do agree
Yeah.
with that. But can I be honest? Think that I don't think Aubameyang's finished, but I just feel like he's not going to be that guy that we thought that he used to be. I feel like there's a little bit of decline there, and I just don't think he's. I think what was really obvious to me in that game was Lacazette and Aubameyang are working as hard as they can. They're totally involved and integrated into this project, and for as long as they're here, they're willing to work their butts off for whatever we're trying to do. They're behind Arteta. They're being good role models for the young kids, but we need a combination of the two of them in one striker that's about 6 or 7 years younger. That's
Isaac.
pretty much what I got from something like that. That's what I got from that game. I didn't get anything other than the guys are trying hard, bad day at the office. But they're two aging strikers that just both of them together kind of fill our needs, but because of their age and just the fact that I just don't feel like it's just sometimes you just run your course, and that's how I feel. So I don't even get if this had been a year ago, I'd be furious at Aubameyang. But I just feel like he's doing as much as he can, and he just may not be that golden boot guy anymore. And it's fine. We need a new striker. That's another conversation we can have during this international break is who is that striker? And then maybe Harsh, I know that's your guy, Souls. All I
Oh no,
saw when I watched.
I can change my guy. That's not if it's Erling Haaland. You can bet my ass off I'm changing my guy to Erling Haaland. But if it's or Alexander Isaac, but if they bring me anyone else, I'm going to be a bit annoyed because that's why
Yeah.
we signed Odegaard to bring Haaland in.
Yeah, it's just one of those. So I don't hold it against
I'm
him. It was
joking for those who in the comments start coming. Oh, he thinks they're going to get Haaland. What a deluded fan! No, I know I'm messing.
it was just a bad day at the office. It is what it is, but we need a striker, and that's a conversation we'll have over this international break. And I think we went through all the individual performances, but something that we do have to talk about is same old Arsenal always cheating. That was so funny to me. Let's have it right. Let's have it right. They came to kick us, to run the clock down, and to sit in a block and hit us on the break. And that was all that they had to give. Ranieri has not updated his Arsenal file because he's still stuck in 2015 and thinks, well, if we kick them, they will stop playing. Yeah, that may have been true when you were managing Leicester, but like now that's not what's going on anymore. And it was clear to me that that was what their whole game plan was built around. They were just kicking us to death, but then every single time that they got touched or we hit them back, they rolled around on the ground. I cannot tell you how many times Emmanuel Dennis was on the ground. When I rewatched the game, I was like, this guy spent more time on the ground than standing up on his own 2 feet. It was actually ridiculous. Ismail Assar, there was one foul that Gabriel had against him where he like jumped in the air to make it obvious that he got fouled. The two brutes in the middle, one of them, I forgot his name, but he got sent off, and Sissoko. It was like no football, just rugby. No football, just rugby. That's it. And for us to have 2 fouls in that first half, well, like the first 20 minutes, and for both of them to be yellows, and then Watford had so many more fouls, and for them not to be yellows. And Danny Rose, dead Rose, okay? He could have gotten a card for any of those first challenges that he made. He had one versus Saka where he literally his foot was like up by his knee, karate chopping his way through the kid. Then the one that he had against Lacazette in the box. That guy never got a yellow, so came to the Emirates to just perform the dark arts and to basically be Broadway actors. And that was it. That was it. And for them to think that we should kick the ball out or give them the ball back, instead of, because the guy was not hurt. That was the funny part about it, was that on the goal, Ranieri's giving it the big and bullshitting and doing his thing, but their players weren't hurt and they were doing it the entire time. He didn't even need treatment. So them to say that we should have given them the ball back and that was bad sportsmanship when you spent the entire game not playing football and kicking us was laughable. I love it. I love it. I love it. You're mad and the media is mad because we weren't nice. Amazing. I love it. I don't want nice Arsenal. I want mean asshole Arsenal that I knew and loved. The Arsenal that when Van Nistelrooy missed that penalty, came up behind him and bopped him in the head like Keown and Ray Parlour did. I want that Arsenal back. And I feel like yesterday showed me that these boys have a little bit of that in them. They were kicking them. I mean, Lukonga pushed the guy. I loved it. I loved it. How did you feel about same old Arsenal always cheating?
Oh yeah, we started the same old Watford always cheating chant as well. That riled them up. That was funny because we got a reaction out of the players for that one. But no, you know what? We were nice to them. In all honesty, in the first half they had a player down. We did kick the ball out, but we seen the pattern and we were like, you know what? Forget this. We can't be arsed. We're here to play football, not to cry like little bitches on the floor. And they were constantly doing it. My issue was it was like every flipping 2 minutes there was a player on the floor. I'm like, just leave him on the floor. If he's injured, cool. Better. It's better that he's injured because at least he's got a reason to cry. It was getting to that point. I was like, I'm hoping you're injured because you're getting annoying now. And I don't like that because it was like, this is like not me. And I was like, but it's so annoying because it's like, there's beautiful passages of play from Watford. There's beautiful passages of play from Arsenal. And then one dickhead from their team decides, okay, let me just cry because I lost the ball. Just play the game, man. Come on, play football. Like, you're here to play football. Like, come bring it. And you know what? I was so happy that, because it was like justice. It was written justice that, and I'm glad we scored that way. And that's the only goal to happen because I've said it, narrative breaking Arsenal. Like every narrative the media's put on us, we've broken every single one of them. Like we can't take the physical battles against Burnley. We've done that. We can't keep clean sheets. But uncoachable defenses. We've broken them narratives. £150 million for a sidestep, broken that. And oh yeah, my Guendouzi would have. Oh yeah, I would. You know what? This is the one game. Yeah, I probably did miss him for it because I would be like, you know what? I would want you to be a dickhead in this game because I was getting that annoyed at Watford. I was like, these guys are just taking the piss, and I was so happy that we gave them the one chance to get their physio team out. Then after that, we were like, yeah, forget this. We're done with you. If you want to cry, we're gonna let you cry, and we can hope you're injured because then at least you got a reason to. I loved it. I flipping loved it. Inject it. Keep doing it. Let them cry. Do you know what they should have done? Celebrated and laughed at the guy. That would have been even better. I would just wanted them to, one of them, Ramsdale, to go over to him and just laugh at him. Just laugh at him. Like, ha.
We didn't owe them anything. I think that's the thing. It's like, we didn't owe you anything. Like,
they
you
spent
your entire time not playing football and trying to, again, run down the clock and kick us. And, I get that the media are going to take it as far as they can, and because Arsenal gets clicks and sells newspapers or whatever, but ultimately we didn't do anything wrong. Spurs scored a goal against us when our player was down injured. Nobody cared about that. So I don't care about this. I'm glad 1-0 to the Arsenal. I'm glad it happened that way. And people will think twice about coming to the Emirates and playing kick your ankles with us, because it's not going to work, not with this young team. So I loved it. I loved it. Yes, that is what I'm here for. We are changing narratives and changing the story around Arsenal. So that's what I love. There's about 82 of you guys watching on all platforms. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And now my final question to you is, we sit in fifth. I don't think fit at the first international break, being in 20th, I don't think a lot of us would have, thought that we would have done this well. Some people did. I personally was like, ooh, I don't know what's going to happen. But sitting in fifth, above Man United, hello, 2 points behind Liverpool, 3 points behind West Ham and Man City, and just 6 points off of the top of the table. Now, it's still very crowded, obviously, but what are we doing here? Are we really in the top four race, or are we somewhere a little bit below that? I mean, Leicester and Spurs really haven't shown up yet in the season, and I do think at some point they will gain a little bit of form unless something really happens to them. I think that those two teams may be able to creep back up there, but right now it's looking like us, Man United, West Ham fighting for those last little spots. Liverpool's not looking amazing, but they're still great. But we're right in the thick of things. And some Arsenal fans are starting to believe, that there is a chance that this team, this young team, can get into the top four. Where do you kind of sit with it? I'm a little bit like, I still think top six is kind of where we're at, because we don't have the depth, the squad depth, in my opinion, to really make it through the 38 games. And I know that we don't have midweek games, but I still think that one injury to a couple of key players can really, really hurt us, knowing what's coming behind them, the Pablo Maries and the Holdings. I mean, great squad players, but still not at the level of what we're used to. So what do you think? Like, what are your honest feelings about this idea that Arsenal are somewhere in this top four race?
I can see it, but for me, it's still top six because as much as look, I'm not saying like Leicester, Villa aren't a test, but they're not the test we need to be able to sit there and go, yeah, top four is definitely on. We need to be competitive against the top three at the moment, which is Liverpool, City, and obviously Chelsea this season. With West Ham being the way West Ham have been, they've been very competitive against. Even the Liverpool game, for example, they really did dominate them. They absolutely battered them in that game, and that's what we need to see. I'm not saying beat Liverpool, but at least be in the game. Even against Man City, I don't want to see 5-0 again. I know there's circumstances behind that, but I want us to be very competitive in these games before I can sit there and go, yes, top four, because we have to beat the teams we have to beat. Obviously, that's a formality to get top four, due to the obviously number of points that are required now in the Premier League to kind of sit in and around those positions. But I'm still maintaining the top six possibility. Top four would be nice considering the drop off, but we haven't taken advantage of many of those situations. Like, for example, if we had beaten Brighton and we had beaten Crystal Palace, we'd be comfortably sitting top four. We would be above Liverpool, we would be above West Ham, and we'd be touching points with the likes of City and Chelsea. So it's the fact that we haven't taken advantage is what scares me, because like Brighton was a big opportunity for us to really push on. Crystal Palace, the same thing, because many other teams dropped points in and around that time. And then obviously we went ahead and dropped points as well. Given that we didn't lose, which is a good thing, but beating them two teams and getting those 4 extra points would have been the difference between being in top four comfortably right now, sat here in this international break, 3 or 4 points above, fifth, would have been where I can comfortably say, yes, top four is on. But if we beat Liverpool, I'll be like, okay, there's something here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just a little bit off of it, if I'm honest. I think we're a striker and a midfielder away and a little bit more experience away. Like, I just don't think we're quite there. And I think if we finish in the top six and we have Europa League, I think that'll kind of be our level at the moment. as harsh as that may sound in terms of Arsenal being Europa League level doesn't feel good, but it feels like the right now. Poncho says Arsenal's reaction to their next defeat will reveal if they're in the top 4 race. And I think that's a really interesting point, is that we haven't lost in
Yes,
a while.
yes, that's a good point.
If we lose against Liverpool, will we capitulate against Newcastle? Because if we lose against Liverpool, to me, you need to get points against Newcastle and Man United. If you play hard and you get a point or so against Liverpool, that's really good. So it'll be interesting to see if we go into some capitulation. But I also think what it'll be interesting to see is how the Arsenal fan base reacts to a loss. We're winning all these games. And for me, if we were to lose a game and then it's Arteta out again, let's say we lose against Liverpool and we drop points against Newcastle and all of a sudden it's Arteta out. Do we actually really believe in this turnaround, or is it just the feel good factor? If we really feel like we've turned a corner, a couple of bad results shouldn't make us completely turn on the management and the players again. So it'll be interesting to see from a fan base perspective what a couple of bad results will do, but also to the players and if they can rebound from it. But personally, I think we're somewhere in the top 6 race. The thing that worries me is just a little bit, it's just there's a lot of teams fighting for those positions and we need to still be on point. Like, we need to be really, really good. And I hope that we can do it. But we're going to have some players out during crucial moments, and Aubameyang and Thomas. We need some reinforcements at that time. And we just need to hope that some of our best players don't get injured. Gabriel going to Brazil is a good thing as long as he comes back injury free. ESR, good thing he's not playing for the under 21s because he probably won't play for England. So there's definitely some I think our ceiling is definitely top 4, but I think there's a smaller percentage that we get that. And I think as we go a little bit lower towards top 6, that's more the likelihood. But top 6 was my goal because I still think we're a couple players short. But us being in the conversation at this point, after being 20th during not the last international break, but I think the one before it, I mean, that's better, isn't it?
Well, that's what we said. We said obviously top 4 would be amazing, but we want to be able to get top 6, but be in the conversation throughout the season that we can get top 4, given that we take advantage of drop points from competitive. For example, this weekend was perfect because United dropped points, Leicester dropped points, Tottenham dropped points, and obviously barring West Ham, all results went our way in terms of But to be fair, even that West Ham kind of went our way because Liverpool then dropped points, who are now only 2 points above us. So if we were, look, I'm not saying we're definitely winning, but let's say we were to beat them, we go above them. So results kind of went our way, and we took advantage of that, and we got full 3 points, and now we're just kind of bridging the gap, and we're kind of gaining the gap and adding to the gap between ourselves and the top 4 competitors that could sneak into it. Now it's just about what West Ham do, and we just need to keep doing our thing and just hope that other teams start dropping points and we just keep taking advantage of that. And we'll be there, but we need to start being competitive in the bigger games for me.
Yeah, and yeah, if they start dropping points, we need to take advantage of it. Still hoping for West Ham to start looking like a team that's struggling to play midweek, and during the league, they're not looking like
It'll
they're.
be
But
more Feb. Yeah,
it's
when we
still
get to
early.
Jan, Feb, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of this also has to do with whether Man United take this opportunity during international break to sack Ollie. He's on a little bit of a vacation. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they say, while he's gone, let's sack him. So there's a lot of different factors in there, but I'm just happy to be in the conversation. And that's all I really can, think of at the moment. But we also kept our invincibility. So happy Invincible Day to you, Souls. I forgot about that. Awesome.
Oh yeah, they
Thank
lost
you,
on
West
the
Ham.
day as well, didn't they? That was incredible.
So yeah, but there's about 90 of you guys watching on all platforms. Thank you so much for joining us. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll be back tomorrow. It'll be all 4 of us, George, Harry, Souls, and I will be back tomorrow. And we'll be doing a little bit of a 5K celebration phone-in show. So if you guys want to come back and actually have a conversation with us, you'll be able to phone in, come on the show, and basically ask us anything as long as it's appropriate, those types of things. And let's have a little bit of a conversation about Arsenal. Then on Wednesday, we'll be talking about Arsen and David Dean's interview, that little thing that they did. We'll be talking about that and get the transcript from that. We'll also be talking about Arteta's interview as well as Josh Kroenke's. So we'll do all the interview stuff on Wednesday. And yeah, so there you go. Yeah, you guys, there's a little troll going around, disliking the videos. There's nothing I really can do about it, but what we can do is everybody like the video so that we can try to overtake them. There's nothing I can do about it. I don't know why they're doing it. It's so silly, but yeah. I mean, you guys were here. You guys know the show wasn't anything to dislike, you know what I mean? But yeah, you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this with a friend, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.